She whispered, "Don't give up yet," and God used her words to save his life. Flashback fades in. Rain poured over the empty parking lot that night. A man sat inside his car, gripping the steering wheel, tears falling faster than the storm outside. His name was Noah, once a respected businessman, now a man who had lost everything: his company, his reputation, his faith. He was ready to give up, until a gentle knock on his window changed everything. A woman stood there, soaked to the bone, holding a cup of coffee she could barely afford. Her name was Chloe, a woman of simple life and strong faith, someone who had learned that even the smallest acts can carry eternal weight. She whispered, "Don't give up yet. God's not done with you." And in that single moment, everything began to change. But how could a single whisper bring a man back from despair? What happens when grace finds us at our lowest point? And what if the one you save ends up saving you too? Stay until the end, because what God does with broken hearts in this story will leave you breathless, and might just remind you that no fall is final when grace walks in. Before we begin, subscribe to Redeemed Hearts, where stories of love, faith, and second chances remind us that Jesus still restores what life tries to break. Rain hammered the hood of Noah's sedan like 1,000 small fists. He sat slumped behind the wheel, dashboard lights washing his face in cold blue. A foreclosure notice lay crumpled on the passenger seat beside a faded company badge. Somewhere in the distance, a freight train wailed through the New Jersey dark. His phone buzzed, another headline calling him a cautionary tale. "Former Prodigy CEO under investigation." The ticker glowed, merciless and bright. Noah turned the screen face down and let the rain drown out the world. He closed his eyes and saw boardrooms that once broke into applause. He saw handshakes, ribbon cuttings, the New York skyline after late-night wins. He saw the moment arrogance edged out wisdom, a quiet shift he never noticed. Missed church Sundays turned into missed prayers, then missing God altogether. Success became oxygen. People became chess pieces on a glass table. Then came the missteps, the shortcuts, the pride that fogged his vision. And pride, he now knew, always sends an invoice with interest. On the seat, a sealed letter from his father waited like a stone. He hadn't opened it, afraid it held both truth and disappointment. His father's last voicemail still sat saved, 2 months old and tender. "Son, come by the house. We'll talk. No judgment here." Noah kept meaning to drive down to Philly to say, "I messed up." But tomorrow kept promising more time, and tomorrow kept lying. Now the letter felt like a door he no longer deserved to knock on. A sudden rap on the rain-fogged window broke his spiral. Noah flinched, wiping a clear circle with the heel of his hand. A woman stood outside, hair damp, hoodie darkened by the storm. She cradled a takeout cup in both hands, breath blooming like fog. Her eyes weren't startled. They were steady and kind, like Sunday morning. "Hey," her lips shaped, barely audible through the rain's steady hiss. She lifted the cup, a small offering against a large night. Noah cracked the window. Rain slithered along the glass edge. "I'm okay," he lied, voice hoarse from a day without words. "You look cold," she answered, calm as if greeting a neighbor. "It's on the house," she added, passing in the warmth and steam. The coffee smelled like cinnamon, like a diner in Queens at dawn. "Thanks," he said, surprised by how much the word hurt to say. She nodded, as if she'd been waiting to hear him mean it. "I'm Chloe," she offered, as if names could anchor a drifting soul. "I work at the little diner off Route 1, next to the laundromat." She smiled, lips trembling from the chill, but brave anyway. "Seen your car here a few nights now. Thought you might need company." Noah stared at the cup as if it might tell him the future. Steam curled upward like prayer rising from a quiet church pew. Did you read the news?" he asked, bracing for judgment. Chloe tilted her head, rain gathering on her lashes like crystal. "I read people better than headlines," she said, not unkindly. "Besides, God doesn't take notes from the comment section." The line hit him like a bell in a storm, clear and resonant. He almost laughed, the sound rusty from disuse and regret. "God and I haven't exactly been on speaking terms," he muttered. "Funny thing," Chloe said. "He's still fluent in your silence." Noah swallowed, throat tight, heart a crowded room of apologies. He glanced at the sealed letter again, a paperweight of shame. "My dad tried to reach me," he said, words dragging like wet rope. "I didn't go. Now the hospital says I missed my window." Lightning stitched the sky open. Thunder rolled like a closing door. Chloe's gaze softened like lights dimming before a hymn begins. "I'm sorry," she said, and let silence hold the weight with him. They listened to the parking lot breathe. Rain, wind, distant traffic. A shopping cart rattled somewhere, a wandering ghost on slick asphalt. Above them, a neon sign sputtered open, though the store was closed. Noah wrapped both hands around the cup, grateful for its borrowed heat. "There's a seat at our diner for you," Chloe ventured gently. "Corner booth, best view of the morning rush and the pastry case. And the world looks kinder through a warm cup," she added. He wanted to decline. Pride lifted its tired head like a reflex, but weariness beat it back, honest and heavy as wet denim. "What if I'm not the kind of person a small place can fix? What if a small place is exactly where big mercies fit?" she said. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of lived faith. Not the kind preached for applause, but the kind worn like work boots. The kind that knows laundromat hours and which quarters don't jam. "I used to sign paychecks for 500 people, he confessed. "Now I can't sign my name without thinking what it cost me." Chloe nodded as if she'd heard this story in 100 forms. "Failure isn't your name," she said. "It's just one chapter heading." Chapters end, she added, like a fact learned by washing dishes. And sometimes God writes in the margins where we can't see yet. Noah felt something soften, a knot loosening where fear had camped. A police cruiser rolled through, tires whispering on black glass roads. The officer slowed, scanned, then kept going into the swollen night. Chloe tucked damp hair behind her ear, a small human holy gesture. "Do you have a place to sleep besides this front seat?" she asked. "Yeah," Noah lied again, then caught himself. "No, not tonight. We open at 5, she said. "You can sit warm until sunrise. I'll pay you back," he murmured. Automatic, the old reflex speaking. "Consider it a loan from Grace," she said, half smile, eyes steady. "Grace doesn't bill monthly, but it does expect movement," she added. He absorbed that, the way rain soaks into the seams of a coat. "What does movement look like?" he asked, "when you can't even stand?" "Sometimes it looks like letting someone hold the door," she said. "Or letting yourself be seen and not running from it. Or showing up for a cup you didn't earn." Noah rubbed the heel of his hand over his eyes, blinking hot rain. The coffee had cooled but still smelled like morning. "Can I ask," he said, "why you stopped tonight of all nights?" Chloe's answer was small enough to fit in the car and large enough for heaven. "Because I prayed on my walk and felt a tug I couldn't ignore. Because I've stood in dark lots thinking I had no more steps. And because once, someone knocked on my window too." Her confession hung between them like a shared umbrella. Noah felt the tilt of the night shift, some axis beginning to turn. "What did they say?" he asked, voice careful, like handling glass. Chloe looked straight at him, and for the first time her gaze was fierce. "They said, 'Don't give up yet,' and I didn't," she answered. The words entered his chest like breath after being underwater. He set the cup down and let the sentence live there. "Don't give up yet," she repeated, softer, not a command but a hand. "God's not done with you, Noah." The way she said his name surprised him. He hadn't told her, but his company badge glinted faintly in the dim. She must have seen it, but chose not to mention what it once meant. She chose his name like a prayer, like a story not yet finished. In the distance, the freight train cried again, but less like a warning, more like a line being drawn toward morning. He thought of the Philadelphia house with the crooked porch light. He saw his father's chair by the window, coffee ring on the side table. He pictured an unopened Bible, ribbon marker limp from neglect. "Maybe I could. Go home," he whispered, frightened by the hope in it. "If the road's still there," Chloe said, "it's because mercy kept it." Her words landed where logic had no lane and love built a bridge. Noah nodded, not a vow yet, but the first inch of a yes. Rain gentled to a steady hush, a cardigan over a loud world. The neon opened side and finally died, the lot dimming to gray. Chloe checked her watch, then the horizon black softening toward blue. "Diner's in an hour," she said. "You coming?" The question waited. He breathed in the cinnamon, the wet air, the fragile promise of dawn. "If I come," he said, "will you sit a minute before the rush?" "I will," she replied. "And I'll pray even if you can't yet." Somewhere inside Noah, a room he'd locked clicked softly open. Not a parade, not a trumpet, just a key turning in a forgotten door. He gathered the letter, the badge, the bruised pieces of his name. He wasn't better, fixed or anything tidy enough for headlines. But he had a cup in his hand and a place to go sit down. He had a voice beside him that didn't flinch from his ruins. He had 7 words building scaffolding in the rain. "Don't give up yet," he repeated, trying them on like new shoes. They fit awkwardly, then firmly, gripping pavement where he slipped. He turned the ignition just enough for the heater to whisper. Chloe stepped back, hugging her arms against the thinning cold. "I'll be there," he said, and this time the words didn't hurt. "Good," she answered, as if she'd expected nothing less from Grace. The night at last began making room for light. Noah watched her walk away, hood up, steps sure on slick ground. She didn't look back. Faith often moves forward without spectacle. He rested his forehead on the steering wheel and exhaled. Sirens somewhere, tires hissing, America's restless midnight continuing on. In a few hours, commuters would stream past with paper cups and headlines. But for a moment, the world was just a parked car and a promise. And a man who wasn't finished because God wasn't finished with him. He cracked the window for the sound of a city yawning into day. A delivery truck coughed awake behind the grocery store's loading bay. A bakery in the strip mall flicked on its first warm light. Noah pictured the diner's corner booth, the one Chloe had saved. He could almost hear plates clinking, a bell above the door. "Morning, hun." The ordinary music of hope disguised as routine and refill coffee. It sounded strangely like Mercy learning his name. He lifted the letter, weighing the choice still waiting inside. He didn't open it yet. Some doors you approach slowly with prayer. But he pressed it to his chest for a heartbeat like a keepsake. "God," he said into the steering wheel, rusty and real, "if you're there." The heater hummed, the rain softened. The horizon thought about Peach. "I'm not much," he added, "but I'm still here." And for the first time in months, the words didn't echo back empty. He straightened, wiped the glass clear, and watched for Chloe's return. A bus rolled by, its lit interior a moving constellation of tired faces. He wondered how many silent stories rode past him every night. He wondered how many had needed just one knock on the window. His own breath fogged and then cleared, fogged and then cleared. "I'll show up," he told the quiet car, testing a new kind of vow. "I'll sit down at the table where Grace keeps a seat." A gull wheeled low as if to underline the scene with a flourish. Somewhere, a radio played Springsteen soft from a distant garage. America was waking up in coffee and uniforms and long commutes. Noah turned the key, not to leave, but to be ready when it was time. The badge on the seat no longer looked like a verdict, just a relic. The letter was still sealed, patience folded into paper. He wasn't fixed, but he was facing east. Footsteps approached. Chloe, now carrying a cheap umbrella, shared. She tapped the glass with 2 knuckles, an old-fashioned hello. "Shift change," she grinned. "Let's go beat the rush and the burnt bacon." Noah opened the door, stepping into air that smelled like wet asphalt. He took half the umbrella and half the weight of the walk. Between them, the small roof made a moving sanctuary. Under it, the words that had kept him breathing walked him toward morning. They didn't talk much. Some hopes are better carried in silence. Puddles mirrored the first suggestion of color in the sky. As the diner sign blinked awake, Chloe glanced up and smiled. "See? Kindness opens early," she said, pushing the door with her shoulder. A bell chimed and warm light met them like an old friend. The corner booth waited, red vinyl, a little torn at the seam. Mercy, it seemed, had a favorite seat. A waitress with a Brooklyn accent called, "Sit wherever, sweethearts." Chloe nudged him toward the booth and set the umbrella to drip. Menu slid onto the table like thin promises that still counted. Coffee arrived before he asked, black as midnight, generous as Sunday. "First refills on me." The waitress winked like she knew the script. Noah wrapped his hands around the mug and met Chloe's eyes. "Thank you," he said, this time like the truth it was. The bell over the door chimed again. The day gathered its people. Steel-toed boots, scrubs, a delivery cap, a teacher grating on her phone. America's ordinary heroes filled the room with the sound of beginning. Noah listened to it, let it tune something broken inside. Chloe bowed her head, simple and unashamed, before the pancakes. "God, thank you for fresh starts and corners to sit in," she prayed. "And for stories that aren't finished yet." Noah didn't close his eyes, but he didn't look away either. He let the prayer run its fingers along the edges of his fear. He imagined his father's porch and the sound the steps would make. He imagined dialing a number and not hanging up this time. He imagined being more than a headline, more than a warning. Outside, the rain finally stopped negotiating and simply ceased. Inside, a whisper became a thread strong enough to pull tomorrow closer. Chloe opened her eyes and smiled, not triumph, just tenderness.
"Today we eat," she said, "and later we make one brave phone call." Noah nodded, a plan small enough to carry without breaking.
He took a breath that reached the bottom of his lungs. The bell chimed again, and the city's heartbeat kept easy time. The booth held them, the coffee steamed, the plates arrived. And Chapter 1 at last had an ending that looked like a beginning. The morning light crept through the diner's fogged windows like mercy itself. Chloe moved between tables with practiced grace, balancing plates and smiles. Noah watched her from the corner booth, steam from his coffee rising like prayer. He wasn't sure why he'd come back, only that something stronger than guilt had led him. Every clatter of dishes felt like a heartbeat calling him back to life. Her words from last night replayed between breaths. "Don't give up yet." They clung to him like a song that refused to fade. He tried to read the menu, but the numbers blurred into memory. The life he used to live still ghosted around him. Expensive suits, boardrooms, noise. Now everything had slowed to the pace of a diner at sunrise. Chloe refilled his cup without asking, her kindness deliberate and quiet. "Morning," she said, voice softer than the jazz humming from the radio. "Didn't think you'd actually show." "Neither did I," he admitted, a hint of shame stitched into his grin. She smiled knowingly, as if God had already whispered she would see him again. "Sometimes obedience just looks like showing up," she said. Noah looked out at the parking lot where puddles mirrored clouds. "Do you really believe God still talks?" he asked, hesitant, almost embarrassed. Chloe leaned her elbows on the counter, eyes clear as daylight. "I don't just believe it," she said. "I live on it." Her conviction made something in him stir, like soil remembering it could bloom. A trucker called for another plate of bacon, snapping the spell for a moment. But Noah's heart didn't retreat. It leaned in closer, hungry for more. He wanted to ask how faith survives heartbreak, how prayer survives silence. But pride still curled around his words like barbed wire. Chloe handed him a napkin, smiling. "Coffee's on the house again." "You'll go broke at this rate," he said. "Grace doesn't keep receipts," she answered. Noah studied her, the calm steadiness of someone who had weathered storms. Her hands bore faint burns, maybe from the kitchen, maybe from life itself. There was no luxury in her, but there was peace money couldn't counterfeit. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. "Since I stopped running," she said, eyes flicking toward the cross necklace she wore. Something unspoken lingered in that answer. A story untold, a wound healed by time. And Noah, for reasons he couldn't name, wanted to know that story. The bell over the door jingled as the morning rush trickled in. Chloe slipped away to greet a family with 3 kids and bright laughter. Noah watched her move through the chaos with quiet grace, every smile intentional. He envied that kind of peace, the kind that doesn't depend on outcomes. When she passed by again, he caught her sleeve gently. "Chloe, why'd you really stop that night?" Her eyes softened, but her tone was steady. "Because someone once stopped for me." The honesty in her words hit him harder than the storm ever had. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, waiting for the rest. She hesitated, glancing toward the window as if replaying a memory. "There was a time," she said slowly, "when I thought I was too far gone. I'd made mistakes, hurt people who didn't deserve it, and I wanted to disappear. But a stranger told me God wasn't finished, that he writes in broken ink too." She smiled faintly. "Now I just try to return the favor." Noah's throat tightened. "And what if I've run out of pages for him to write on?" Chloe sat across from him, ignoring the ringing phone and hungry customers. "Then he'll make new pages," she said simply. "He's good at that." Noah laughed under his breath, half disbelief, half relief. "I don't even know how to start again," he said. "You already did," she replied, nodding toward the coffee in his hands. "Showing up is the hardest prayer." Her words lodged deep, heavier than they sounded. He thought of his father's letter again, still unopened. Something told him that to move forward he'd have to face what he'd left undone. "Do you ever get scared you'll lose faith again?" he asked. Chloe's hand brushed a ring scar on her finger, subtle but not invisible. "Faith isn't about never falling," she said. "It's about who catches you when you do." The diner hummed around them, the ordinary world carrying extraordinary truth. As the breakfast crowd faded, Chloe slipped into the booth beside him. You look like you need fresh air, she said. Walk with me after my shift? He hesitated, the instinct to retreat still alive beneath his ribs. But her eyes had a way of making the word yes feel safe. All right, he said finally. But only if you promise to talk more about Grace. I can't talk about Grace, she said, standing. I can only show it. And with that, she left him curious enough to stay. The clock above the counter ticked past 10. Noah lingered, watching her move through the quiet aftermath of the rush. He wondered how someone so ordinary could feel so sent. Every plate she cleared looked like another small act of worship. He thought of his own hands, once used to build towers of pride. Now they trembled just holding a cup of mercy. He whispered under his breath, "Maybe I could learn this kind of living." When her shift ended, Chloe grabbed her jacket and waved him over. They stepped into the late morning air, sun cutting through wet clouds. The world smelled like renewal, pavement drying, earth waking up. "Where are we going?" Noah asked, walking beside her. "Just across the street," she said. "There's something I want you to see." They crossed toward a small park, quiet except for the laughter of children. "Here?" she said, stopping near a stone bench engraved with a verse. The bench read, "He restores my soul." Psalm 23:3. "This was my spot," Chloe said, sitting down slowly. "I used to come here after night shifts when I thought I had no one." Noah ran his fingers over the engraving, the grooves cold and smooth. "Did he?" he asked softly. "Restore you?" She looked at him then, not with triumph but testimony. "Every day," she said, "even when I don't deserve it." The wind carried the faint scent of cut grass and bakery bread. Somewhere, church bells rang 11 times, echoing through the small town. Noah closed his eyes and let the sound fill the hollow in his chest. He imagined his father hearing those same bells years ago, praying for him. He imagined the whisper spreading through the years. "Don't give up yet." And for the first time, the phrase didn't sound borrowed. It felt planted. Like maybe God had meant it for both of them all along. Chloe rose, brushing crumbs from her skirt. "You don't have to fix everything at once," she said gently. "God's timing doesn't need your calendar to work." He smiled, surprised by how natural it felt to trust her words. "Still," he said, "I'd like to make things right with my dad." "Then start with a call," she replied. "Mercy usually picks up on the first ring." Her eyes glimmered, half sunlight, half something divine. Noah took out his phone, the cracked screen blinking awake. The contact Dad sat there, untouched since spring. He stared at it, thumb hovering, heart drumming loud as the bells. "What if he doesn't answer?" he whispered. "Then you'll leave a message Grace can finish," Chloe said. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the kind of peace that survives fire. So he pressed call. The dial tone rang, once, twice, 3 times. Each ring stretched longer than a confession, heavier than silence. Then a voice, weary, gentle, impossibly familiar. "Noah?" His father's voice cracked on the single word. "Dad, it's me," Noah said, tears burning uninvited. He turned away, embarrassed, but Chloe didn't move. She simply stood beside him, eyes closed, praying without words. When he hung up, the world felt different. Lighter, awake. "He wants to see me," Noah said, voice half wonder, half disbelief. "I told you," Chloe smiled. "God's not done with you." They stood quietly, the kind of quiet that feels like holy ground. A breeze rustled the trees above them like pages turning. "What about you?" he asked. "Is God done with your story?" Chloe's gaze drifted toward the horizon. Not even close. She began walking ahead and Noah followed, drawn by something he couldn't name. The sun broke fully through, scattering gold across the wet pavement. Every step felt like a step away from ashes, toward something sacred. He didn't know where this path would lead, but he didn't need to. For the first time in years, he wasn't walking alone. He whispered the words again under his breath, steady and sure. "Don't give up yet, not when Grace still has chapters to write." The next morning found Noah standing outside the diner again, heart unsteady. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside, greeted by warmth and coffee. The world outside was loud, but in here it was all slow comfort and second chances. Chloe looked up from behind the counter and smiled as if she had expected him. "You're early," she said, pouring a fresh cup before he even asked. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Too many memories knocking at the same time." "Well," she said softly. You showed up again. That's how healing begins. He sat in the same booth, the one that had started to feel like a confession room. Steam curled above the cup, carrying the faint scent of cinnamon again. Somehow that smell had become a kind of prayer. Familiar, grounding, gentle. Chloe leaned on the counter, wiping a plate that didn't need cleaning. You called your father yesterday, she said as if sensing the weight of it. I did, Noah replied. He wants me to come home this weekend. Her smile widened. Then maybe grace travels faster than guilt? He stared into the coffee's dark surface, seeing both past and reflection. What if I don't know how to face him? He asked. Chloe sat across from him, chin resting on her hand. You don't have to face him strong, she said. Just face him honest. Her words struck something deep, something older than his pride. He wanted to argue, to build walls of logic, but couldn't, because truth has a way of dismantling defenses without asking permission. A young mother entered with her toddler, raincoat dripping on the floor. Chloe rushed to help, kneeling to pick up the toy the little girl dropped. Noah watched the tenderness in her movements, slow, patient, without performance. He realized kindness when real doesn't need an audience. Chloe stood, hair falling loose, laughing softly at the child's grin. It was a laugh that didn't erase pain, but lived beautifully beside it, and Noah wondered how long it had been since he'd laughed that way. When the diner quieted, Chloe returned, sliding a pastry across the table. It's not on the menu, she whispered, conspiratorial. But you look like you need sugar. Noah grinned. You're terrible for business, you know that? Maybe, she said, but good for souls. That's the trade I'm aiming for. The air between them shifted. Not romantic yet, but something sacred, like the beginning of understanding between two hearts that had been lost too long. He took a bite, and the taste of vanilla felt almost like forgiveness. You ever think God brings people together for a reason? Noah asked quietly. Chloe looked up, surprised, her eyes steady but searching. I think God weaves stories, even the broken ones, she said. Sometimes he lets them cross paths just long enough to remind us he's near. Noah nodded, staring at the coffee cup she'd set before him. The words "don't give up" yet echoed again, softer this time, but deeper. He wondered if that was the thread God was weaving, hope disguised as coincidence. The door opened, and a gust of wind scattered napkins from the counter. An older man entered, gray hair slicked back, carrying a box of pastries. Morning, Chloe, he greeted warmly. Brought extras from the bakery next door. Bless you, Mr. Jenkins, she said, taking the box and setting it down. The man's eyes landed on Noah. Haven't seen you here before. Noah offered a small handshake. New regular, I guess, Jenkins chuckled. This place has a way of catching people when they fall. Chloe rolled her eyes playfully but didn't deny it. Don't listen to him, she said. He exaggerates. No, Jenkins countered. Healing likes coffee, kid. That's just truth. The moment drew a smile from Noah he hadn't expected. He realized how good it felt to be seen without explanation. After the man left, Chloe leaned closer. See? Even strangers preach sometimes. And Noah thought, maybe he'd been deaf to sermons that never used pulpits. The hours slipped by in the rhythm of clinking cups and quiet laughter. Chloe told him about growing up in Pennsylvania, where winters taught patience. She spoke of faith like someone who'd wrestled it to the ground and won. Her story wasn't polished, it was raw, real, and more powerful because of it. I learned the hard way, she said. Faith doesn't erase pain, it redeems it. Her eyes lifted, steady and luminous. That's what you're learning too. He swallowed hard. Then redemption hurts more than I expected. They walked out together after her shift, the afternoon golden and alive. The streets glistened from the morning's rain, reflecting sky and second chances. Noah shoved his hands in his pockets, unsure what to say next. So, this is what you do every day? He asked. Feed people, she said. Yeah, and listen more than I talk. That's a skill I never learned, he admitted. Then maybe God brought you here for lessons, she teased. They stopped at a street corner, the light blinking red, then green. A church bell rang in the distance, pulling both their eyes to the steeple. Do you ever go back to church? She asked gently. Noah hesitated, the question slicing through layers of shame. Not since the headlines, he confessed. Chloe didn't flinch. She just nodded with quiet understanding. Then maybe it's time to stop letting the world define what grace forgave. Her words stayed with him as they crossed the street together. Every sentence she spoke seemed to open a window in his chest. He wanted to ask how she knew exactly what to say, but didn't. Sometimes silence is the holiest way to listen. A child's laughter echoed from a playground nearby. "Funny," Chloe said, smiling softly. "God's voice sounds like that sometimes." And for the first time, Noah believed her. That night, Noah sat in his car again, but it felt different this time. The rain had stopped, leaving stars faintly scattered over the city glow. He unfolded the letter from his father, finally brave enough to look inside. The handwriting was shaky but full of warmth. "Come home, son. We still have time." Noah pressed it to his chest, eyes stinging with a gratitude too deep for words. He whispered, "Thank you, God," unsure if it was prayer or surrender. But either way, heaven heard it. His phone buzzed, a message from Chloe. "Don't forget to pack hope with your luggage. It travels light." He laughed, shaking his head at her gentle humor. Hope, that word used to feel like something for other people. Now it sounded like something God had left on his doorstep. He typed back, "Thanks, and thanks for the coffee that saved my soul." She replied, "It wasn't the coffee, Noah. It was Grace wearing an apron." He leaned back, eyes closing, replaying her voice in his mind. The diner, the laughter, the verse on the bench, all pieces of a new beginning. He realized he didn't meet Chloe by chance. He was being rewritten by mercy. Tomorrow he'd drive to Philadelphia, face his father and maybe himself. But tonight he let the whisper settle in again. Don't give up yet. Outside, the city lights flickered like candles in a silent prayer. And inside, a man once broken started believing in dawn again. Noah drove aimlessly through town after midnight, the streets washed clean by rain. He passed quiet storefronts, the kind that closed early but kept hope in their windows. A faded sign outside a church read, "You are never too far for grace to find you." He slowed down, the words landing like an anchor in his chest. The same God he had ignored for years was now chasing him through streetlights. He pulled over, engine humming low, and whispered into the still night, "I hear you." And for the first time, the silence felt like an answer. At dawn, he found himself back near the diner, watching the first customers arrive. Through the glass, he could see Chloe tying her apron, sunlight catching her hair. Something about her steadiness made the world feel less unpredictable. She wasn't rich, powerful, or famous, but she was grounded in something eternal. He envied that kind of strength, the kind that survives disappointment with grace. When she finally noticed him outside, she waved, smiling like she'd been expecting him. "Back already?" She mouthed through the glass, and he nodded. Inside, she slid him a cup without asking. No words, just presence. Noah took a sip, feeling the warmth crawl through his chest like peace. "Heading to Philadelphia soon?" she asked casually. "Tomorrow," he said, voice trembling under the weight of that word. "You'll be fine," she said. "God's already halfway there, waiting." He wanted to believe her, that mercy could travel ahead like light. "Maybe," he said softly, "but what if I break again?" "Then you'll know how to return quicker," Chloe replied, her tone unwavering. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Redemption isn't a straight road, Noah. It's full of detours, dead ends, and wrong turns. But grace doesn't lose the map." Her words were both gentle and fierce, and the kind that stayed long after goodbye. He felt tears threaten but blinked them away, embarrassed by how easily she disarmed him. "You talk like you've been through fire," he said quietly. Chloe smiled. "Maybe I have. But that's where light learns to shine." As the morning crowd thickened, she moved away to tend to others. But Noah stayed seated, watching her through the blur of motion and sound. Every act, pouring coffee, offering napkins, sharing laughter, Wayne looked holy. He realized that faith wasn't about escaping ordinary days. It was about redeeming them. He folded his father's letter and slipped it into his pocket, ready at last. Whatever tomorrow brought, he wouldn't face it alone anymore, because somewhere between a diner booth and a whispered prayer, hope had found him. The train to Philadelphia hummed softly beneath Noah's seat, carrying him toward yesterday. He sat by the window, watching the countryside blur into streaks of gold and green. Every passing mile felt like peeling back a layer of fear. He clutched the envelope from his father's letter, creased, softened by his hands. Some passengers chatted quietly, sipping coffee, their lives simple and unbroken. Noah envied that kind of normal. He had lived too long at extremes. Now he just wanted to belong to the ordinary again. As the train slowed near the city, his pulse began to quicken. Memories returned. The row house with the white steps, the smell of rain on brick. He remembered Sunday mornings when his father read Psalms over breakfast. Back then, faith wasn't a mystery. It was the air they breathed. But years of ambition had drowned out that quiet rhythm of prayer. Now he was coming back not as a son of success, but as a man undone. He whispered under his breath, "God, help me walk through this door." At the station, the air felt heavy with both nostalgia and nerves. He spotted his father before his father saw him. Older, thinner, walking slowly. The sight pierced him with guilt and love all at once. He wanted to run forward, but shame kept his feet anchored. Then his father looked up, eyes widening, the years collapsing between them. "Noah," he said simply, voice trembling with something holy. And that one word, his name, carried more grace than any sermon ever could. They stood there, unsure how to bridge the space time had built. Then his father stepped closer and wrapped him in an embrace. It wasn't tight, but it was steady, like a door finally unlocking. Noah froze, then let his head rest on his father's shoulder, breath hitching. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking, the words spilling from deep places. His father nodded against him. "You were lost, son, but you came home." The station blurred around them, but heaven felt close. They walked to the parking lot. Silence soft but not awkward. His father's old truck still smelled like oil and coffee beans. "No more limousines for you, huh?" His father joked gently. Noah smiled through tears. "Guess not. I traded them for honesty." His father chuckled. "That's a good trade. Costly but good." The city skyline shimmered in the distance, familiar and foreign. And in that small cab, forgiveness began to breathe again. At the house, everything looked smaller, quieter than Noah remembered. The porch light flickered, the same bulb that had once guided him home late at night. A wind chime clinked softly, singing the same song his mother loved. He paused on the steps, fingers brushing the wooden rail. Inside, photos lined the wall. Graduation, Christmas, the family that once was. "Your mom prayed for this day," his father said quietly. Noah swallowed hard. Guess her prayers outlived her. They sat at the kitchen table, the one built for laughter and long talks. Now it felt like sacred ground. Both of them unsure where to start. His father poured coffee, hands shaking slightly with age and emotion. "You don't owe me explanations," he said finally. Noah looked down, ashamed. "But I owe you apologies." His father smiled softly. "You owe me breakfast visits and honest prayers." It was the kind of forgiveness that made pride seem absurd. Noah confessed the rest. The deals, the lies, the slow corrosion of his heart. He didn't spare details. Shame demanded truth. When he finished, silence filled the room, thick and honest. Then his father reached across the table, laying a hand on his arm. "Son," he said gently, "you're not the first to lose yourself chasing what fades. But the miracle isn't that you failed. It's that grace found you in the rubble." Noah blinked away tears. "I don't deserve another chance." "Good," his father said, "because grace isn't a paycheck. It's a gift." He leaned back, eyes glistening with years of wisdom and pain. "When you were little, you used to build towers out of blocks. You'd cry every time they fell, but I'd tell you, rebuild it better this time." He smiled. "Guess we're back to that." Noah laughed, the sound trembling but real. "Then maybe I'll start with foundation instead of height." They spent the afternoon talking about nothing and everything. Old neighbors, weather, the Phillies' losing streak, all gentle bridges to peace. The rhythm of conversation soothed what years of guilt had torn. At one point, his father bowed his head and prayed over lunch. "Thank you, Lord, for lost things found in second mornings," he said. Noah's eyes burned, but he didn't hide it. For the first time in years, prayer didn't sound like a stranger's voice. Later, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the street amber. Noah leaned back, arms crossed, letting the quiet settle in. "Dad," he said finally, "I met someone." His father raised an eyebrow. "Oh, she's different," Noah said. "She sees light where most people see wreckage." His father smiled knowingly. "Sounds like someone God sent to show you the mirror." And Noah knew he was right. As twilight deepened, Noah checked his phone. A message blinked from Chloe. "Praying for you. Remember, grace shows up in familiar rooms." He smiled faintly, typing back, "It did. You were right again." He could almost hear her laugh through the text. Warm, Quiet? Sure. His father noticed and chuckled. That her? Yeah, Noah said softly. She's been a lighthouse when I deserved darkness. Well, his father said, then don't drift too far from shore again. That night, Noah slept in his old room for the first time in years. The posters were gone, the furniture older, but peace had moved in. Moonlight streamed through the curtains like a benediction. He opened his Bible, dusted but not forgotten, and found Psalm 32. You are my hiding place. You will protect me from trouble. The verse landed differently now, not as comfort but as commission. He closed his eyes, whispering, Hide me in you this time, not in success. Dreams came quietly, of rain, laughter, and Chloe's whisper echoing again. Don't give up yet, she said, her voice mixing with his father's prayer. In the dream, he stood on the diner's threshold holding both a coffee cup and a cross. And behind him, light spilled through the door, steady and soft. When he woke, the dawn had arrived, pale and hopeful. He sat up, the letter now resting on his nightstand, opened, answered, redeemed. And for the first time, Noah felt unafraid of the next chapter. As he packed to leave, his father handed him a folded note. Give this to your friend, he said. The one who saw what I couldn't. Noah unfolded it after the train departed. It read, Thank you for standing in the gap when my son couldn't see grace. Tears blurred the words and gratitude filled the cracks in his heart. The city faded behind him, but peace stayed near. Tomorrow he'd go back to the diner, not to escape, but to begin. Outside the train window, the sun climbed higher, burning through the clouds. Noah pressed his hand against the glass, the reflection split by light. Every sound, every mile felt like resurrection on the move. He thought of the verse from the bench. He restores my soul. Yes, God had done that, through coffee, through tears, through grace disguised as people. And somewhere beyond the tracks, Chloe was probably pouring someone else a cup. But this time, he'd be the one to bring her something back. A promise. He looked down at the folded note again, smiling through the ache. This was more than a reconciliation. It was a renewal. A story once marked by pride was now lined with purpose. He closed his eyes, whispering, Thank you, Jesus, for the return road. And as the train sped on, its rhythm echoed like a heartbeat restored. Faith wasn't finished with him yet, and neither was love. Some whispers, he realized, are meant to echo forever. The next Monday morning felt different, heavier, quieter, full of promise and doubt. Noah stood in front of his apartment mirror, straightening a tie he hadn't worn in months. He was meeting a former colleague who'd offered him a chance to consult again. A small project, nothing glamorous, but honest work, something to rebuild with. He looked at his reflection, older, humbled, but not hopeless anymore. In his pocket, the folded note from Chloe stayed close, a quiet reminder. Grace doesn't lose the map, she had said. He held on to that truth. The meeting was at a modest co-working space in downtown Philadelphia. Rows of laptops hummed, the scent of coffee thick in the air. When his old colleague, Daniel, saw him, the surprise was visible but not cruel. Didn't expect to see you back in the game, Noah, he said cautiously. I didn't either, Noah replied. Guess I'm playing a different game now. Daniel studied him, then nodded. We all crash at some point. You just got headlines. The words stung, but Noah smiled. Maybe it took that to finally listen. They walked through the open office, Daniel explaining the project's scope. It was a non-profit initiative, helping small businesses adapt to new markets. The irony wasn't lost on Noah. Once a man who crushed small companies, now helping them grow. Think you can handle this? Daniel asked, half testing, half teasing. I can try, Noah said. And this time, I'll keep prayer on the payroll. Daniel laughed, shaking his head. Man, you've changed. Noah glanced toward the window. I had help. Later that afternoon, Noah walked past the old skyscraper that once bore his name. The glass facade gleamed like pride, tall and perfect. Everything he no longer wanted. He paused across the street, staring up at the logo being replaced. A new company had moved in, his empire gone without a trace. But strangely, he didn't feel anger, only release. Some thrones crumble because God loves the person sitting on them too much. He whispered, Thank you for tearing down what was killing me. That night, he stopped by the diner again, weary but lighter. Chloe noticed immediately, the tired joy in his face. You got through the day, she said, sliding a mug toward him. Barely, he smiled. but I didn't quit. That's something. More than something, she replied. That's obedience. The bell over the door chimed, the smell of pie filling the air. Noah realized the diner had become his sanctuary disguised as ordinary life. They talked between customers, laughter breaking through the noise. But as the evening thinned, Noah grew quiet, eyes distant. What's wrong? Chloe asked, sensing the shift. He hesitated, words dragging like stones. What if I fail again? Chloe didn't answer right away. She wiped the counter, thinking. Then she leaned closer, eyes soft but unwavering. Then fall forward this time. Fall where grace can catch you. Her answer pierced the fog of fear that had crept back in. He took a deep breath, nodding slowly. Easier said than done. Faith always is, she said with a faint smile. That's why it matters. The clock ticked above them, steady as a heartbeat. Outside, rain started again, tapping gently against the windows. Seems like the weather's following me, Noah said, half laughing. Maybe God's just washing away what's left of yesterday, she replied. He looked down, tracing the rim of his mug. I used to think control kept me safe, he said quietly. But now it feels like letting go is the only way to breathe. Chloe nodded. Surrender's scary because it feels like loss. But it's actually the moment God starts to rebuild. Her words settled over him like a blanket against the storm. He wondered how someone could sound so certain about unseen things. A few hours later, a group of young men entered the diner, loud and restless. They joked about money, cars, and power, echoes of who Noah once was. He stiffened, the old shame clawing at him from beneath healed skin. One of them recognized him, eyes widening. Wait, aren't you that guy? The question sliced through the chatter like a knife. Whispers followed, then quiet laughter. Didn't think you'd show your face again. Chloe stepped forward before Noah could respond. Everyone deserves to eat in peace, she said calmly, voice steady as a hymn. The young men mumbled and eventually left, leaving tension behind. Noah exhaled, humiliated, but her presence anchored him. You didn't have to do that, he murmured. Yes, I did, she said, because shame only wins if you let it. Her eyes met his and something sacred passed between them. Courage disguised as care. For the first time, Noah didn't run from being seen. After closing, they sat together in the empty diner, lights dimmed. The rain had stopped, leaving only the hum of the fridge and faint jazz. Chloe leaned back, arms crossed, exhaustion softening her posture. You okay? She asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm just tired of carrying ghosts. She smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time to bury them under grace. He laughed quietly. You make it sound easy. It isn't, she said. It's holy. He helped her wipe the last tables, their hands brushing once briefly. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, and it was alive. Outside, streetlights painted soft halos on the wet pavement. Chloe locked the door and turned to him, half smiling. You're learning, she said. You're finally letting light in. Maybe, he said. But what if it leaves? Then you chase it, she replied. Until you learn it never really left. Noah walked her to her car, their breath visible in the cool air. You ever think fear is just faith with bad timing? He asked. Chloe laughed softly. Maybe. Or maybe fear is where faith begins. She opened her door, pausing before getting in. Tomorrow's a new page, she said. Don't write it with yesterday's ink. He nodded, memorizing her words like a verse. Good night, Chloe. Good night, Noah, and remember, no giving up. When she drove away, he stood there, watching her taillights fade. He looked up at the night sky, streaked with clearing clouds. Every star looked like a small yes shining against the dark. He whispered, I'm not done yet. And it didn't sound like pride. It sounded like prayer, small, raw, enough. And somewhere he imagined God smiling. Because sometimes faith doesn't roar, it whispers, keep going. Back at home, he opened his Bible again, flipping to Isaiah 43. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. He let the verse wash over him, its promise too big for fear. He realized faith wasn't about being fearless. It was about being accompanied. He closed the book, exhaling deeply, letting peace settle into his bones. Outside, the city slept, but heaven stayed awake. And Noah, at last, was learning how to rest. Later that night, Noah couldn't sleep. The silence of his apartment felt too loud. He replayed the diner scene in his head, the laughter, the judgment, Chloe's defense. He realized she hadn't just stood up for him, she had stood with him. That kind of loyalty was foreign to him. Unconditional, undeserved, pure. He sat by the window, watching raindrops trail down the glass like slow prayers. God, he whispered, if this is what new beginnings feel like, help me not to run. Outside, thunder rolled softly, not angry, just alive. The next morning, he received an email from Daniel about a major presentation. Investors are interested again, the message read. We'll need your input tomorrow. Noah's chest tightened, excitement and fear colliding in his ribs. He'd prayed for another chance, but now that it had arrived, he trembled. Could he be trusted with success again without losing his soul? He reached for his phone, scrolling to Chloe's contact, then stopped. This time he decided to pray first before asking for reassurance. He went for a walk through the quiet streets, shoes splashing in shallow puddles. The morning air smelled like renewal, wet earth, coffee, and courage. Every storefront reflected the same truth. The world had kept moving without him. But instead of bitterness, he felt peace in that. Maybe humility was freedom. He stopped in front of a small church, the doors open and light spilling out. Inside, the pastor's voice echoed, God doesn't resurrect what he doesn't plan to use. Noah smiled faintly. Then maybe I'm being rewritten, not replaced. That evening, as the city lights flickered awake, Noah wrote in his journal again. He listed everything he feared, failure, exposure, falling again, and handed it to God. The ink bled slightly where tears touched the page, turning confession into prayer. He closed the notebook and looked up at the sky, streaked with soft pink. Whatever comes next, he whispered, let me build with your hands this time. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang, calling the city to evening. And Noah, listening, knew the real rebuilding had finally begun. The week began bright and full of promise. Noah woke early, prayed briefly, and walked to work with purpose in his step. The consulting project was small but growing fast, and his ideas were taking root. Daniel had started trusting him again, even mentioning a potential partnership. Every morning felt lighter, every evening calmer, until the storm broke. It began with a headline shared, reposted, and whispered like old gossip. Disgraced CEO faces renewed investigation in financial misconduct. The article appeared on a major business site, his name in bold again. Someone had leaked old files, twisting truth into sensational bait. By lunchtime, Noah's phone was buzzing with messages and calls he didn't answer. Daniel pulled him aside, face grim. I know this isn't new, but the board's nervous. I understand, Noah said quietly. I'll cooperate however you need, Daniel sighed. I'll fight for you, but you know how people are. Noah nodded, his stomach a tight knot of dread and déjà vu. He stepped outside, the sunlight suddenly too sharp, the city too loud. He had worked so hard to rise again, to be seen differently. Now it felt like the past had crawled out of its grave, determined to haunt him. He wandered aimlessly, the weight pressing against his chest. When he reached the diner, Chloe was already there, wiping down tables. She looked up, sensing something off before he spoke. What happened? She asked, eyes narrowing with concern. He dropped into a booth, exhaling. The past happened again. She sat across from him, silent, waiting. They published another story. Half lies, half memories I wish I could erase. He rubbed his temples, voice cracking. I can't do this twice, Chloe. She reached across the table, her hand resting over his. Yes, you can, she said simply. Because you're not alone this time. He looked up, eyes glassy. But everyone else will think I am. Chloe squeezed his hand gently. Let them think. God knows the truth. Her voice was calm but firm, the kind that could hold a storm still. You taught me not to run, he said, smiling weakly. Then don't start sprinting now, she replied. He chuckled once, short and bitter. You sound too confident for someone in a diner apron. I serve coffee, she said, but I also serve reminders of hope. Her words disarmed his despair again, small but powerful as prayer. That night, news spread faster than grace. Social media dug up old interviews, replaying his downfall with cruel fascination. Noah turned off his phone. Every headline, another wound reopened. He sat in the dark apartment, the silence thick and accusing. Fear whispered, You'll never escape this. Shame added, You don't deserve her faith. And then softly another voice rose inside. Don't give up yet. He grabbed his Bible, the one Chloe had convinced him to keep near. It fell open to 2 Corinthians 4:8. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. He read the verse aloud, voice shaking, tears sliding down his jaw. Not crushed, he repeated. Not crushed. He didn't know if it was defiance or belief, but he clung to it. When the phone buzzed again, he finally answered. It was Chloe. Don't sit alone in the dark, she said. I'm coming. 20 minutes later, she knocked at his door, rain dripping from her coat. She didn't speak. She just handed him a bag of takeout and a towel. You shouldn't be out in this weather, he said. She smiled. Storms don't scare people who've already survived worse. They ate in quiet, the sound of thunder like punctuation between sentences. After a while, she whispered, You're allowed to be scared, you know. He looked at her, eyes wet. I just don't want to disappoint God again. Chloe leaned back, thoughtful. You think God didn't see this storm coming? He didn't answer. Her question landed like lightning. Faith doesn't prevent storms, Noah, she said gently. It just builds better boats. He laughed softly, shaking his head. You really should write a book, she shrugged. I'm too busy living the chapters. Outside wind howled against the window. Inside, hope flickered stubbornly between them. Days passed and the investigation gained traction again. Meetings were canceled. Calls went unanswered. Whispers grew louder. Daniel called one evening, his tone apologetic but final. Noah, the board's pulling out. It's not personal. Noah closed his eyes, the familiar ache blooming in his chest. Yeah, he said softly. It's okay. Maybe it's mercy in disguise. He hung up, but the echo of loss lingered long after. He returned to the diner late that night, shoulders heavy, heart heavier. Chloe was cleaning up, but when she saw him, she stopped mid-motion. It's gone, he said quietly. The job. Everything again. Her expression didn't change. She simply walked to him. Not everything, she said, her voice steady. You still have purpose, he looked away. Sometimes that feels like the hardest thing to believe. Then let me believe for you, she whispered. The rain outside thickened, drumming on the roof like grief made music. They stood in silence for a long time, just the hum of the diner keeping rhythm. Finally, Chloe spoke again. Do you trust God even when you don't understand him? Noah hesitated, jaw tight. I want to. Then that's enough, she said. He can work with want. Her words were gentle but hit deep like scripture spoken without chapter or verse. He exhaled slowly, nodding. Then I'll keep wanting. The next morning, Noah walked to the park where the stone bench waited. The inscription, He restores my soul, was slick with rain. He sat down, letting the drizzle soak his jacket. People passed by, umbrellas raised, unaware of his quiet surrender. Restore me again, he whispered, voice barely audible. He didn't ask for reputation or success, just renewal. And somehow that prayer felt bigger than either. As he sat there, a woman approached and handed him a tract. God loves you, she said softly before walking away. He looked down and laughed in disbelief. The verse printed inside was the same as the one from his Bible. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. He stared upward, raindrops blurring his vision. Okay, Lord, he murmured. I hear you. That evening, Chloe found him back at the diner again. You've been quiet all day, she said, refilling his cup. He smiled faintly, just thinking about how God keeps repeating himself. She laughed. That's because we're slow listeners. They sat for a while in companionable silence. Then he looked at her, eyes clearer than before. Thank you for being the voice that cuts through my noise. She shook her head. No, Noah, I'm just an echo of his. Her words lingered, filling the space between them like light through glass. He realized faith wasn't about never facing storms again. It was about standing. He took a sip of coffee, warmth spreading through his hands. Then maybe the storm isn't here to destroy me, he said slowly. Maybe it's here to show me I'm no longer afraid of drowning. Chloe smiled. Now that sounds like faith. As the diner lights dimmed and rain softened outside, Noah exhaled deeply. He knew the storm hadn't ended, but something inside him had shifted. Fear no longer felt like a chain, just a shadow behind the light. He turned to Chloe, his voice quiet but sure. You were right all along, he said. Grace really does build better boats? She smiled, eyes glimmering in the reflection of the neon sign. And God, she said, never runs out of anchors. When he finally stepped outside, the air smelled new, the pavement clean. The city glistened as if rebaptized by the night's downpour. He walked slowly, unhurried, feeling the quiet pulse of purpose again. Behind him, the diner's light flickered, a beacon in the drizzle. He whispered one last prayer before disappearing into the mist. Thank you for storms that remind me who you are. And heaven, listening, answered with peace instead of lightning. Morning broke soft over the city, a quiet hymn in pale gold. Noah walked toward the diner with a bouquet of grocery store daisies. He felt silly and 16, but peace made room for simple gestures. Through the window, he saw Chloe laughing with Mr. Jenkins. The sight steadied him the way scripture steadies a shaken heart. When she noticed the flowers, her smile slowed into something tender. Cheap miracles, he said, offering them. They still count, right? She took the daisies like they were fragile as answered prayer. Miracles don't come with price tags, she said, finding a jar. Water fizzed as the stems slipped into their small baptisms. For a breath, neither spoke. The hush felt like sanctuary. Outside, buses sighed and the city woke without spectacle. Inside, two people learned the weight of gentle beginnings. Thank you, Chloe added, voice just above a whisper. After the breakfast rush, they walked 2 blocks to the park. The bench verse caught light. He restores my soul, glittering with dew. Chloe sat, knees angled, hands wrapped around a travel mug. Noah stood for a moment, uncertain where to place hope. Sit, she said, patting wood polished by other weary stories. He did, and the quiet threaded them together without hurry. Tell me, she said. Not headlines, heartlines. He told her about the first company he ever loved building, how it began at a kitchen table with thrift store chairs, how faith had been friend and compass until pride got loud. He admitted the cost, people, peace, the sound of his own yes. Chloe listened like prayer listens, patient, unafraid of silence. Loss taught you a language, she said finally. Don't forget it. Which language? He asked. Need, she answered. And gratitude. They volunteered that afternoon at the church pantry on Maple. Noah stacked cans, fumbling the rhythm until muscle memory learned mercy. Chloe moved between families with the steadiness he envied. Names, she'd said earlier. Say their names. It dignifies the day. So he did. Ms. Alvarez. Mr. Boone. Tanya with the red coat. Each name felt like a rung on a ladder out of himself. He realized redemption often wears work gloves and smiles. Later, they split a sandwich on the church steps, feet touching. Do you miss power? Chloe asked, not accusing, just honest. Sometimes, he said, but I don't miss who I was with it. She nodded, eyes bright as truth. Then let God reteach stewardship. Of money? He asked. Of everything, she said. Time, words, attention. He looked at their shared lunch like communion in paper wrap. Then today feels sacramental, he said, and meant it. As dusk approached, they grabbed coffee to go and walk the river. Street musicians stitched saxophone lines through the cooling air. A boy practiced ollies on a chipped skateboard, failing, laughing, trying again. Look, Chloe said, chin lifting toward the boy. Falling forward. Noah smiled, catching the echo of her Chapter 5 sermon. Maybe I needed to see it in sneakers, he said. God illustrates, she replied. Best teacher I know. They stopped at a vendor selling tiny silver crosses. Noah lifted one, the metal warm from the lamp's halo. Feels small, he said, unsure if that was good. Small is portable, Chloe answered. Takeable into hard rooms. He bought 2 without flourish, one for his keychain, one for hers. She hesitated, then let him fasten it beside her diner key. The ordinary just got holier, she said, half smile, half prayer. The next day, Noah met Daniel for coffee, uneasy but brave. I won't fight the board, Noah said, but I won't hide either. Daniel watched him, measuring new lines carved by humility. Funny, he said. You look taller with less to prove. Noah laughed. She says redemption adjusts posture. She, huh? Daniel smirked. Buy the ring after the investigation. Noah shook his head, smiling. First, I'll buy a better daily yes. That evening, Chloe invited Noah to Wednesday night Bible study. Folding chairs, mismatched mugs, a crock-pot bubbling hospitality. The pastor asked for testimonies. Noah's chest tightened, then loosened. He stood, voice low, words careful as he crossed a minefield. I ruined good things, he said. God found me anyway. Hands didn't clap. Heads nodded the way storms nod at rain. Chloe's eyes shone, neither pity nor pride, only presence. After, a widower named Earl told Noah he'd prayed for strangers nightly. "Maybe you were one," Earl said, patting his shoulder like an altar. "Keep walking," he added. "Shame hates motion." The line struck flint in Noah's bones. Sparks warmed the cold rooms. Outside, the night smelled like leaves deciding to let go. "Want pie?" Chloe asked, because healing likes sugar sometimes. "Yes," he said, "and the conversation that comes with it." They sat by the window as rain stitched the street glossy. Chloe sipped slowly, watching weather like it was scripture. "What scares you now?" she asked, fork hovering mid-air. "Receiving without earning," he said, "and loving without guarantees." "Both are gospel," she answered, soft but sure. He swallowed. The bite tasted like courage. "Then teach me to stay when fear says run." The teaching looked like small, ordinary Wednesdays. Noah walked her home when shifts ended late. No agenda but presence. They memorized Psalm 121 on stubborn nights that tempted worry. They left notes in each other's pockets. Prayer in pen, oxygen in ink. He learned the names of her favorite regulars and their orders. She learned the names of his fears and their triggers. Together, they practiced calling things by truer names. One Saturday, they cleaned the diner's storage closet, laughing at chaos. Chloe unearthed a first aid kit and a box of Christmas lights. "Every story needs rescue and sparkle," she declared, unspooling wire. They strung lights over the corner booth where beginnings started. The glow turned red vinyl into Bethlehem on a budget. "Pilgrim's welcome," Noah whispered, hand brushing hers by accident. They didn't move away quickly. Neither did the moment. The investigation's drumbeat didn't stop, but it softened. In the absence of panic, peace planted quiet roots. Noah kept showing up, at church, at the pantry, at her booth. He learned to apologize fast and forgive faster. On hard days, Chloe said, "Breathe like prayer and keep your eyes up." On good days, he said, "Let's stack gratitude like dishes after supper." Both kinds of days counted as worship. One evening, Noah brought dinner to the diner before closing. "Role reversal," he said, lifting a paper bag like an offering. "Service goes both ways," Chloe replied, surprised and warmed. They ate on the counter, feet hooked on lower rails. He told a joke so bad even the salt shaker blushed. She laughed the laugh he'd waited months to earn. Joy, he realized, sounds like dishes when hope is doing the wash. "Tell me your almosts," Chloe said, eyes curious and kind. "The times you nearly gave up after the storm came back." He told her 3, then 2 he'd never spoken aloud. She didn't fix them. She held them like breakables. Then she offered her almosts. Roads she didn't take, rings she returned. They didn't trade trauma. They traded trust. Some nights, that's the miracle. On Sunday, Noah sat next to his father in the third pew. Chloe met them there, a shy wave becoming family. The hymn rose, low at first, then brave, then unashamed. Noah's voice wobbled, steadied, and found its note. During the sermon, the pastor said, "Light isn't shy around scars." Noah squeezed his father's hand. Chloe's shoulder brushed his. 3 stories, 1 redeemer, 1 room bright with mercy. After church, they drove to the river and walked the long path. "Name what you want," Chloe said, kicking a maple leaf. He startled at the question, then answered slowly, "I want a life that wouldn't work without Jesus." Wind lifted her hair. She smiled like a yes. "And with me?" she asked, voice careful as glass. "With you," he said. "I want honest in every ordinary miracle." They stopped at a railing where the water talked in silver. Noah reached into his pocket and unfolded a note. "My father asked me to give you this," he said, breath unsteady. She read the words and covered her mouth, eyes filling. "Tell him I was just holding the light he prayed for," she whispered. Noah didn't trust his voice. He nodded, grateful and undone. Love, he realized, is the echo of someone else's faithful petition. As sunset warmed the steel of the bridge, Noah turned to Chloe. "I don't have a ring or a plan beyond showing up," he said. "But I have a redeemer, a father, and a corner booth that started everything. I have Wednesday nights and Psalm 121 and cheap daisies. If you'll let me, I'll spend my days making ordinary holy with you." Silence stretched, not empty, just wide enough for heaven to walk through. Chloe's yes arrived as a tear and a smile that felt like sunrise. They didn't seal it with spectacle, just hands held steady. Traffic hummed, a gull cried, a jogger waved incidentally. Somewhere, church bells counted the hour like a benediction. "Love like this is maintenance," Chloe said, half laughing. Then I'll learn to be a faithful mechanic, he answered. They started back slowly, unhurried by tomorrow's unknowns. Redemption, it seemed, preferred walking pace. That night, Noah wrote one line on a page before sleep. I am not who I was, and I am not alone. He left the journal open, a small altar on the nightstand. Across town, Chloe set the daisies in fresh water again. Both rooms held the same quiet presence like a shared address. Outside, the city exhaled. The storm learned their new names, and love in the light of redemption kept its lamp on. Spring unfolded gently over the city, as if heaven itself had exhaled peace. The diner windows gleamed with sunlight, and laughter replaced the sound of storms. Noah sat in the familiar corner booth, sketching plans for a new project. Not a company this time, a community initiative for small businesses. Redeem the Work, he'd called it, a name Chloe said sounded like a prayer. Every idea on paper carried fingerprints of faith and humility. The man who once chased profit now chased purpose. Chloe entered, apron tied loosely, hair pulled into a soft braid. She smiled when she saw him, her eyes reflecting all the miles they'd walked. Still working on changing the world one spreadsheet at a time? She teased. He grinned. Maybe, but now I let God handle the projections. She poured him coffee, the scent as familiar as forgiveness. Big launch tomorrow? She asked. Yeah, he said softly. But this time I'm not doing it alone. That evening, they closed the diner early and walked to the park. The bench where it all began waited. Same verse, new meaning. He restores my soul wasn't just scripture anymore. It was biography. Chloe sat first, patting the space beside her. Remember the night you couldn't look up? She said. Noah nodded. And you whispered what saved me. Then I guess God's whisper still echoes, she said, smiling. They watched the sky blush toward sunset, clouds gilded in gold. Children played by the fountain, their laughter unburdened by headlines. For a while, neither spoke. Silence had become their favorite language. Noah reached for her hand, fingers brushing against warm grace. Do you ever wonder why he chose us? He asked quietly. Chloe smiled, gaze steady. Maybe because we finally stopped resisting. He exhaled, the truth fitting perfectly between them. The next morning dawned bright, full of nervous hope. Noah stood before a small crowd at the community hall. Chloe sat in the front row, her smile steady as an anchor. He spoke not as a CEO, but as a redeemed man. I thought my story ended in shame, he began. But God had a chapter left, and he wrote it with mercy. The room listened, some nodding, some wiping quiet tears. Afterward, people gathered around him, thanking, hugging, asking questions. He saw in their eyes what he'd once lost, belief that change was possible. Chloe joined him, handing out coffee to the volunteers. It felt poetic, the same act that once began their story. When the last guest left, Noah turned to her, eyes bright. You realize, he said, you've been part of every miracle since the first one. Wrong, she replied, smiling. I've just been serving coffee to the author. That night they met at her apartment for dinner. Candles, mismatched plates. A gospel record played softly in the background, crackling like old grace. Noah had brought daisies again. Not grand, just faithful. You never forget, she said, arranging them in a chipped vase. Forget the first miracle, he asked. Not a chance. They ate slowly, conversation warm and easy. Faith had turned their quiet into home. When thunder rolled in the distance, they didn't flinch this time. Rain pattered on the window, steady and familiar. Chloe lit another candle, its flame trembling but unafraid. Do you ever miss the storms? She asked softly. Sometimes, he said. They remind me how much light matters. She nodded, thoughtful. I guess love's like that too. Especially ours, he said. Built where storms once lived. Days later, they returned to church for the outreach program. Children colored cardboard crosses. Volunteers stacked canned goods. Chloe read a verse aloud, Psalm 30:11. You turned my mourning into dancing. Noah caught her eye across the room, smiling. He could see the verse alive in her, every movement redemption in motion. When the event ended, Pastor Earl approached them both. Storm survivors make the best shelter builders, he said. Don't waste that. That evening, the city held its breath, sunset painting everything golden. They stood on the diner's rooftop, lights of the skyline glowing beneath them. You ever think about what's next? She asked. Every day, he said. But I stopped trying to write it myself. Good, she smiled. That's his department. He took her hands, palms calloused from serving, wholly from loving. Then maybe this time, he whispered, I'll just listen for the author. The wind picked up, carrying the faint hum of church bells. Somewhere below, a busker played Amazing Grace on a saxophone. The sound floated upward, weaving between their hearts. Noah laughed softly. Even Heaven's playlist agrees with us tonight. Chloe leaned her head on his shoulder. Grace likes repetition, she said. Then I'll never get tired of the chorus, he whispered. The city glowed like a congregation of quiet lights. Weeks passed and the new project flourished beyond expectation. Small stores reopened, families regained hope, communities began to heal. Noah often caught himself smiling for no reason. He'd find Chloe across the room, sleeves rolled, hands busy, heart open. They didn't need titles. Their partnership spoke louder than rings. Yet one afternoon, while cleaning the park bench, he paused. Maybe, he thought, it was time for a promise. He planned it quietly. Not grand, just sacred. A morning at the diner, a walk to the park, sunlight soft as prayer. When she arrived, he handed her coffee, hands trembling slightly. What's this? She asked, laughing at his nervous grin. Just a refill, he said. But I'd like to keep pouring it forever. Her laughter broke, turning into tears. And Noah, voice shaking, said the words, Will you marry me? The world seemed to pause. Rain-wet leaves, birds mid-song. Chloe covered her mouth, eyes wide and glistening. Yes, she whispered, the same word that once saved him. They both laughed through tears as the bell over the diner door chimed. The city went on living, unaware of heaven's applause. Don't give up yet, she whispered again, just to remember. He smiled. Never again. Not with you beside me. Their wedding was small. Church basement, strings of lights, mismatched chairs. No tuxedos, no cameras, just worship songs and testimonies. Mr. Jenkins baked pies. Earl gave the blessing. Daniel read scripture. Noah's father stood proudly, tears rolling unashamed. When Chloe walked down the aisle, daisies in her hands, time stilled. Her eyes found Noah's, steady, strong, sure. And in that moment, grace itself seemed to breathe. They exchanged vows written on folded paper, shaky with sincerity. I once thought faith was found in victory, Noah said. But now I know. It lives in the rebuilding. Chloe's voice trembled as she answered. And love is faith in motion. Their rings were simple silver, polished by shared beginnings. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, applause rose like praise, and heaven, smiling, whispered finally. After the ceremony, they sat alone for a moment in the quiet hall. The candles flickered low, wax pooling like melted prayers. Chloe leaned against him, whispering, You're still the man from that rainy night. And you're still the voice that pulled me back from the edge, he said. Funny, she smiled. We were both just echoes. Of what? He asked softly. Of a God who never stopped speaking. Outside, rain began again. Gentle, not fierce, as if to bless. They stepped into it hand in hand, laughter rising like song. Each drop shimmered in the lamplight, tiny baptisms of joy. They didn't run from it this time. They walked slowly through the downpour. Because now, storms no longer symbolized fear. They meant renewal. When they reached the diner, its light waited warm and open. And through the window, the words open late flickered like grace itself. Noah turned to her, rain in his hair, peace in his eyes. Do you think we'll ever forget where we started? Chloe shook her head. Not a chance. Some miracles stay in the muscle. He smiled, pressing his forehead against hers. Then let's keep living proof that whispers can become promises. She laughed through happy tears. And promises can build forever. And as thunder rolled softly in the distance, they kissed beneath redemption's rain. If this story touched your heart, remember, God still rewrites broken stories. Leave a heart in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to Redeemed Hearts, where every storm becomes a testimony and every ending finds its beginning in Him.